The elegant man has got out of the limousine and is smoking an English cigarette. He looks at the girl in the man's fedora and the golden shoes. He slowly comes over to her. He is obviously nervous. He doesn't smile to begin with. To begin with, he offers her a cigarette. His hand is trembling. There is the difference of race. He's not white. He has to get the better of it. That's why he's trembling. She says she doesn't smoke. No thanks. She doesn't say anything else. Doesn't say, leave me alone. So he's less afraid. He tells her he must be dreaming. She doesn't answer. There's no point in answering. What would she say? She waits. So he asks, but where did you spring from? She says she's the daughter of the headmistress of the girls' school in Sadek. He thinks for a moment, then says he's heard of the lady, her mother, of her bad luck with the land. They say she bought in Cambodia. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Hi, this is Marta from Ruby Soup with Pearl Juice, and today I am bringing you all a very short review of The Lover by Marguerite Duras. This is a book written in French in 1985. Marguerite Duras is considered like one of the big literary giants of France. And the reason why I am reviewing this book is because I'm starting a new series called AMWF Reviews. I'm going to be going through books, comics, and movies that feature AMWF couples, and I'm going to do reviews on these subjects. I have actually talked about The Lover before on this channel in my favorite angsty romances. I'll link it somewhere up here. But I thought that it would be fun to give a own independent review for this novel. Some of you might have heard about the book before, but in case you haven't, I'll give a quick summary. It follows a young girl. She lives in Vietnam with her mother and her two brothers. And her mother suffers from depression as well as that the family, due to the father passing away, they are economically fraught. And one day the girl meets a older Chinese man who is quite rich, and her and this guy start a affair. And then the whole book follows their affair and how the girl's family reacts to this affair. And, this is not a spoiler because it's mentioned in the beginning of the book, how they're eventually torn apart. The first thing that I'll say about this book, which almost everybody says about this book, is that it is really, really beautifully written. The words just leap off the page. Duras kind of has a way to really wax lyrical about the most mundane things. She can make like anything sound so profoundly beautiful. Like, I would say that she was a poet who happened to write novels. So if you're a person who likes really well written books, you should definitely check this out because the prose is just so exquisite. And because of that, this book is just an absolute joy to read, and it's also really short. So if you're like intimidated by really long novels, this book is actually under 200 pages. In case people want to know, this is very much an adult novel. There's a lot of sexual content in this book, and if you are uncomfortable with that stuff, you might want to stay away from this book. However, I will say this, that the sexual content in this book is actually not cringe-worthy at all. It's really good. Flavor Wire said that this was one of the sexiest books written of all time, and I definitely agree with that. The lovemaking scenes between the girl and the Chinese guy are like just so hot. We look at each other. He understands what I've just said. Our expressions are suddenly changed. False, cut in evil, and deaf. I tell him to come over to me. Tell him he must possess me again. He comes over. He smells pleasantly of English cigarettes, expensive perfume, honey. His skin has taken on the scent of silk, the fruity smell of silk tussore, the smell of gold. He's desirable. I tell him of this desire. If you're tired of a lot of really cringy sex scenes, then you should definitely check this out because this averts that completely. But beyond that, this book actually tackles a lot of really heavy and really complex subjects. It deals with a lot of things like race, but also class and gender. And it also deals with abusive families. People assume that they're just sleeping together so that he will give her money. And that's not entirely the case, but that is like the image that the girl deals with because she is poor and he is rich. But then there's also the fact that she's white and he's Asian, and due to the fact that he's a person of color, then he could get into trouble for having this affair with this white French girl. And the girl herself is actually physically abused by her mother and also by her brothers because of this affair. For a French novel in the 80s was very daring, and even today it's quite shocking to read about just how everywhere the racism is in this society. My brothers never will say a word to him. It's as if he were invincible to them. As if, for them, he weren't solid enough to be perceived, seen, or heard. This is because he adores me, but it's taken for granted I don't love him, that I'm with him for the money, that I can't love him. It's impossible that he could take any sort of treatment from me and still go on loving me. This is because he's a Chinese, because he's not a white man. The way my older brother treats my lover, not speaking to him, ignoring him, stem from such an absolute conviction. It acts as a model. There's also, as I mentioned, a very interesting depiction of abusive households. The girl has an older brother who verbally and physically bullies the girl as well as her little brother, despite the fact that the mother is favoring the abusive brother. She's actually not demonized at all. The girl actually really loves her mother despite her shortcomings. And another thing that I mentioned is that the mother deals with depression, and how this book talks about it is actually very refreshing because the mother is, again, not demonized for her depression, and it's actually treated as something that kind of happens, and that the critique more is that they don't have anyone to help them out when the mother goes through these episodes. Why you should read this book, beyond the fact that it deals with all of these issues in very complex, very morally gray, and very honest ways, is that the girl and the Chinese guy, they are such a well-written couple. You really root for them. It's very hard not to cry when they're then torn apart. It's one of these few books where the message is a little bit about how we shouldn't let things like classism and racism get in the way of true love. And while that could be like a message that becomes very banal and simplistic, then Marguerite Duras is able to make it in such a way that she doesn't sugarcoat things, but she is still able to bring that message through in a really thought-provoking way. So I think this is very much deserving of its label of a modern classic. So that was my review of The Lover by Marguerite Duras. I have to say that it's actually one of my favorite books of all time, so this was a bit of a biased review, but maybe you guys didn't mind that. Have you guys read this book? I would love to hear your thoughts. Comment down below. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye!